go ahead and do one click. Mike, it's supposed to rain today. I was going to write in today and then said, oh, it's going to rain. So anyway, the real purpose of just saying something and getting more sun, that's a good thing. Right now, guys, we are in the season. This is the time to really work, and only because if you list it, I promise you, come May or June, it's going to be closed. List it now. Things and all that. Anyway, that's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks, Dean. Okay. All right, John, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys, but it's cutting out a bit. So I'm not sure how well y'all can hear me.
Okay, we can hear you. So I'm going to introduce our speaker today. Shoni is, this is going to be, you got me, okay? I know I'm not as good as Shoni. Okay, so we are going to introduce let me read a short bio. John Israel is founder and chief gratitude officer of Mr. Thank You on client and team retention. John is one of the most sought after speakers and trainers who teaches real estate professionals how to achieve by developing thriving, profitable relationships, both inside and outside the organization. That is awesome. Who doesn't want that? 16, John started a personal social experiment around human connection that became a worldwide movement, a book, and Thank You Project. John's Mr. Thank You story has been featured on ABC News, Fox News, Good Morning America, and his clients include Square, Salesforce, Ronald McDonald House, and many others. His goal is to rehumanize the workplace and gratitude, respect, and appreciation. He lives in Plano, Texas, woohoo, with his wife, 4 kids, and his loyal from Gonzaga University with a degree in exercise science. He was a semi-professional skateboarder. I'm sure it's not a skateboarder in high school and college. That's legit. He's like Tony Hawk. And then his hobbies include Birkin yoga, working out, families. So everybody welcome John Israel. Give it up, everybody.
Hello, hello. Good to see
right,
everybody
John.
today.
Can you hear us?
It's cutting out, so I didn't hear anything you said. So you could have just said, you know, hey.
You're a professional skateboarder like Tony Hawk. That's all we heard.
Oh, yeah. So that was my life. My goal, my first goal that I ever set for myself was be the first professional skateboarder with a college degree. And so didn't officially become pro, but did go pretty far and had a great experience through college skating. So yeah.
Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So let's start. I have some questions that we'll ask you. Is that good?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. So we want to know, what's the Mr. Thank You Project and why did you start?
Great, excellent. And if at any point you guys hear, my audio cutting out, just let me know and then we'll try to fix that. So the Mr. Thank You Project for me started as a personal social experiment. So I run a gifting company. So my company's name is Mr. Thank You. Mr. Thank You is a strategic gifting firm. We work with real estate agents, loan officers, home builders, and we do gifts for their teams and their companies. And we started that business at the perfect time to start anything in real estate, which was 2009. By the way, were any of you guys in real estate in 2009? Raise your hand if you guys were in real estate 2009. That was a tough year, several years for us. But if you made it through, you know that there was a really a good pot of gold on the other side of that. And so several years later, by 2015, 2016, we built a very lucrative business. We were all over the country, had some great clients, but I was over it. I was overworked, overwhelmed, and so unhappy. I was ready to walk away from it all. Everything I'd worked my entire career to build. And The odd thing about that is on paper, I had everything I ever said I wanted. I was married. We had bought our first house. We had our first child. Everything was going great, except I was over it. And it wasn't until I came home one day and I did what I normally do, which is complain about my day. And I'll never forget, because my wife was sitting on the couch and she was nursing our infant son at the time in one arm, and she was writing handwritten thank you cards with the other arm. And I remember complaining about clients or vendor issues or something like that. And my wife interrupts me and she says something I'll never forget. She says, John, if you can't appreciate what you have now, who's to say you'll be any happier when you finally get what you say you want? If you can't appreciate what you have now, who's to say you'll be any happier when you finally get what you say you want? And that rocked me. And I would challenge many of you on this call with that same question, right? If you can't appreciate what you have now, the market conditions, the team you have, any of those things, who's to say you'll be any happier later on? And she was right. I had a problem, and it was a problem I didn't have a name for, but we have a name for it now. It's called perpetual discontentment, which is the never-ending feeling that what isn't enough. And what's interesting about this problem, this perpetual discontentment, many of you have this same issue. You don't necessarily have to raise your hand if you do, but it's very common with entrepreneurs and high performers to struggle with never feeling fully contented with what you have. And in a lot of ways, it's supported your growth and success, because ultimately, if we're not contented with what we have, we're going to strive for more. We're going to strive for a better process, more clients, a more efficient team. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But when it starts to affect our overall happiness and how we can enjoy the everyday life that we live, that's when it becomes a problem. So I hired a coach to work with me at the time, and he had me focus on habits. And he started by having me read this book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And there's a concept in this book called a keystone habit. Now, a keystone habit is a singular habit that you have that has a trickle-down positive effect in multiple areas of life. And this makes a ton of sense, because when you think about working out, right, that would be considered a keystone habit. Because when we're working out, number one, we're going to look better and feel better because of that. But secondly, because we're working out, we're going to sweat a lot more, which means we're going to drink a lot of water. Turns out that's a pretty good habit. And thirdly, because we're working out, we're going to get more fatigued, so we'll actually sleep better at night. So there's all these positive benefits from this singular habit called working out. And so we took that concept and we were trying to focus on how do we apply this to our business, right? How do we apply this to our business vision? And our mission and our vision with Mr. Thank You was, and still is to this day, to elevate the level of gratitude on the planet. And I remember the day we came up with that statement, and it was like, that's it. You know, you get the goosies when you say it, right? The goosebumps. You're like, yeah, that's our mission. That's our vision. That's what we're excited to show up to work every day and do. But there's a big problem. And that problem comes inside of a quote by a gentleman named Ralph Waldo Emerson. And what he says is, excuse me, I cannot hear what you are saying because who you are speaks so loudly. And what I love and simultaneously don't love about that quote is that it challenges us to be consistent with our word. It challenges us to not just say, hey, this is what I care about, this is what matters to me, but to literally prove it in our behavior every day. And the issue really became, you could go and ask 100 people about John Israel and say, hey, what do you know about this guy? And they would probably say some nice things like driven or successful. But you know what they wouldn't say? They wouldn't say grateful. They wouldn't say appreciative. And they certainly would not say happy to describe me. So I thought, how can that be? How can I be this guy who says he's about elevating gratitude on the planet, yet I don't embody it in my life at all? And so that kind of catalyzed this idea of what's a project, what's a keystone habit that I could create around gratitude to help me live that mission of our business every single day. And so that became known as the Mr. Thank You Project. And so there were a couple of rules to this project. So I'll go through these. First rule was number one, I committed to handwrite 5 thank you cards every single day for 365 consecutive days. So every card had to be handwritten, couldn't be a text or a video. Every day resets at 0. Okay, so this means I can't like skip 3 days and then write 20 cards on the 3rd day. Because if something's a true habit, you literally do it every single day, no matter what, right? The third rule was I could write a max of 3 cards per any one person. And that's because I know myself. And if I couldn't think of who I would write a card to, I might write another card, like the 70th card to my mother, or something like that, right? So I wanted to challenge myself every day to be looking for different people to appreciate. And the fourth and final rule was that for any and every day that I missed writing my 5 cards, I would donate $1,000 to charity. And that was an important part because, and this is one of the reasons I love Keller Williams, because you guys are all about the personal development, the coaching, and accountability. And so my coach was all about those same things. And he says, hey, John, I love that you have this idea. This sounds really cool. And by the way, any of you guys ever had a great idea that sounded awesome on paper, maybe at a team meeting or maybe at the family reunion, and then you get back home and you start working, and then just what happens to that accountability, or what happens to that project that you wanted so dearly to accomplish? It just fizzles out. So this accountability was going to make sure that I showed up every single day looking for people to appreciate and actually follow through on my commitment. And that's what I did. So 2016, 2017 was a year that I committed to handwrite 5 thank you cards every day for a year, which when you do the math on that, 5 cards times 365 days is 1,825 letters of appreciation in 1 year's time. And I don't care who you are, if you made a commitment like that to express love, gratitude, and appreciation every single day for a year, you would be a different person by the end of that year. And this project absolutely transformed my business, my marriage, and my personal well-being. And when you're a top producer, one of the most important priorities you need to have is your well-being. Because for you to keep showing up day in, day out, giving your best, you have to love what you do and you have to feel good about yourself. And so that was really a transformational journey. So that was kind of the genesis of it. That's what the Mr. Thank You Project was. And that's what I did starting October 10th of 2016, all the way to October 9th of 2017.
But I want to read. Are you ready? And we want to know the background of this. Curiosity is the appreciation is the birthplace of empathy. With empathy, we develop compassion. And when you have compassion, you have. So give us the background of this quote, how you came up with it, and how we can apply this into our relationships.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because this is a really important quote as it relates to business, right? Especially as it relates to client relationships. And, what was so fascinating about this project was learning where words come from. And everyone in the room, if you're in real estate, you're going to love the word appreciation when you learn where it comes from. So the word appreciate comes from the Latin word appreciare, which literally translates to appraise or to set the value of a thing. And which is interesting, right? Because when you think about selling real estate or helping a buyer get into a property, what's one thing that you need to have before you can fund the loan on the house? You need to have an appraisal. Well, have you ever thought and wondered what is that? What goes into the appraisal process? Well, it's a human being who shows up to a property with a giant list of questions. They are extremely curious. And they're asking things like, what's the condition of the roof? Is there any pest or termite damage? What are comps for other properties like this going for in the area? And they're asking all these questions, and then they come back to you with a sheet of paper that says, I deem this property to be worth X dollars. Someone who shows up with curiosity is asking one question, which is, where's the value? Where's the value in this human being? Where's the value in this relationship? They're seeking and they're looking for it. Now, the interesting thing about that concept is that is not our natural way of being as humans, right? We're actually all born with something called a negative bias. A negative bias is where we are prone to look for what's wrong. We're prone to look for the threat before we look for what's right. And it makes sense because when you think about our development throughout society, throughout generations, that served us very well back when we lived in the jungle or in the bushes, and we'd hear a growl behind a rock. We wouldn't think it's a cute little kitty cat, right? We would assume the worst and we would run away and we would live to see another day. So this proneness to looking for what's wrong rather than what's right has actually helped us survive for generations. It's baked into our DNA. But the problem comes where it's not very good at developing relationships with strangers. It doesn't serve us in how we interact and show up. Because on the one side, we're constantly looking for what's wrong with this person. Where's the threat? Can I trust this person? Versus asking the questions, hey, what does this person care about? What matters to them? What are their dreams and goals? What's their biggest why, their purpose in life? And so I bring this up because you asked where that quote came from, and it actually came from where most great quotes and ideas come from, which is the airport. I was boarding a plane in Los Angeles at LAX airport, and I was flying to Philadelphia for an event. And when I get to the airport, I'm constantly asking myself this question, right? Who can I appreciate today, right? Who's doing something great that I can acknowledge and affirm? And I get to the airport and I see that our flight is delayed. And I see at the restaurant right across from our gate are these two pilots from our plane. And I instantly think, oh my gosh, I have to thank the pilots on my plane. I mean, because think about that, right? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I fly all the time. And every time during takeoff, I'm doing a little prayer for safe travel, hoping we get there okay. And they've delivered 100% of the time. And I thought, man, I've never taken the time to appreciate the pilots on my plane. So let's do that today. But I had a problem, which is I don't know these guys. We've never met. How do you thank somebody you don't even know, you've never spent any time with? And I was going back through some of those definitions that we talked about, right? Appreciation. Appreciation is the curiosity of looking for what's good, looking for what's right. And so I just walk up to these pilots and I say, hey, do you mind if I have a seat? And they say, go for it. So I sit down and I start peppering these guys with questions. And while I ask them a lot of things, I ask them 3 particular questions, not necessarily in this order, but I want to share with you these 3 questions because it did something really interesting. It connected us really quickly. And it also gave me a deeper appreciation and respect and understanding of who these guys were. And these are relevant questions if you're focused on recruiting in your business and building relationships with other realtors or bringing them up in the business. It's also relevant when you're working with your buyers and your sellers or your referral partners. And so the first question I asked these pilots was, first of all, I have no idea what it's like to be you, right? As a pilot. Why did you get into this field? Like, what's your why? What's your big purpose behind this? And what was fascinating was hearing these pilots talk about that this wasn't just a thing they got into on accident, right? This is something they've been planning to do since they were children, right? Like they wanted to be a pilot since they were little kids. So they got into the Air Force and then they did that for a number of years and they got out and they wanted to continue in the commercial airline. And so this is what they've been doing forever. It's not like you start at baggage claim and then suddenly work your way up into being a pilot, right? That's not how that works. You've got to really intentionally want to pursue that career and it's super hard. Second question. So what's the best part about being a pilot? What do you love about your job? Right? If I was talking with a buyer or a seller, I'd say, hey, so what gets you excited about moving right now? Why do you guys want to sell this house? What are you looking forward to in this new property that we're trying to find? And people start to share with you what they're excited about, what they're passionate about. And hearing these pilots say, well, number one, obviously the travel perks are amazing. We get to go all over the world for free. We get to bring our families. And they said something that was really interesting. They said, if you've never been in the cockpit of a plane and you're up there in the sky looking at the world from 20,000 feet in the air, I mean, you see things differently than everybody on planet Earth. And that's just one of the most beautiful things that we get to do every day. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Third question. What's the hardest part about being a pilot? What's the hardest part about being you? If I was working with a client, I'd say, what are you most afraid of in selling this property? What are you most worried about in the mortgage process of getting prepared to buy your first home or your next home? What are you most concerned about in your real estate career as you're considering moving to our team? Asking what people are afraid of and what their fears are opens up a level of vulnerability in the relationship where they start to trust you and share with you things that many people who are the closest to them don't even know. And I'll never forget what they said. They looked at me and they both said the same thing, which is how much they miss at home because of their job. Birthdays, anniversaries, special events. I mean, you can't imagine how many things that they've sacrificed for their work. And one guy got really excited and he said, hey, you know what? Not this year, because this is the first time in 20 years that I get to be home for Christmas Day. And I remember hearing that and thinking, my heart breaks for this guy. He hasn't been home for Christmas in 20 years. That's what it's like for every pilot that is riding and flying the planes that you walk into whenever you go somewhere. And eventually we had to board the plane. And so I started thinking, okay, like I've got a different appreciation, a different respect for these individuals. So I board the plane, we take off, my tray table comes down, and these are the cards that come out, and what to say just kind of instantly shows up. And I said, dear pilot, I know it might seem strange to receive a thank you card from a passenger, but as I was boarding the plane today, I was thinking about how much I'm going to miss my family on this trip. And then I realized this is what you do every day for your job. I can't imagine how many birthdays, anniversaries, or special events you sacrificed for your work, not to mention the hundreds, if not thousands of hours you spent in the cockpit training for your job, because nobody becomes a pilot by accident. All of that to have some bad weather, a slightly bumpy landing, and then have people complain about it. So whether you hear it enough or not, I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and everybody on our flight. And I fold up the card, and I write two very similar cards to two pilots on that flight. We land in the next destination. I physically hand them their cards while they're still in the cockpit because they're still there while I'm exiting. And then I jump on another plane to do the exact same thing with two different pilots. So 4 cards to 4 different pilots on 2 flights. Now, this is what was interesting. I don't normally do this, but at the time I only had my business stationery with me, which has my name, cell phone number, and email physically printed on the card. This is what was crazy. Within 24 hours of landing in Philadelphia, 3 out of those 4 pilots personally contacted me to say thank you for the card that they received. One went on to say, you know, John, in my 12 years of flying, I have never received a thank you card from a passenger. And I thought, that's crazy. How is that even possible? These guys with such a big, significant, important job, and no one's even taking the time just to say thank you to them. And I thought, geez, if that's the case for these guys with such a big, important job, what about everybody else in their lives, in their careers, in their marriages? There is a huge appreciation deficit in the world. And this isn't just in relation to like theory, right? This idea, this experience that I had. There's actually research done by the Gottman Institute. The Gottman Institute studies happy and successful marriages. And they came out with this thing called the magic ratio. And what they discovered is they would give these couples a problem. They would give them an issue, and they would watch the couples and how they handled the problem. And what they would notice, they were looking for 2 things. They were looking for negative comments, criticism, blame, upset, hurt feelings, versus positive interactions, support, kindness, smiling, soft touch. They would look and notice how these couples interacted. And what they found was there was a magic ratio of which couples had the most successful marriages over time. And what they discovered by continuing to follow up with these couples is that there was a ratio of 5 to 1, 5 positive comments to every 1 negative comment created the most successful, happy marriages over time. Meaning that while struggles were occurring, instead of blaming or complaining, they would bring positive energy and different perspective, curiosity to that interaction. Those couples were the most likely to have a successful marriage. On the opposite side, couples that were most likely leading to divorce had a 0.8 to 1 ratio, meaning they would have 0.8 positive comments to every 1 negative comment. Those relationships were in a appreciation deficit. And those couples were more likely leading to a divorce. Now, so obviously we're scaling this out over relationships, over business, but the point that we're looking at is that how we show up and interact with people, thinking about not just ourselves, but what this person needs, what they care about, what matters to them, and appreciating what is good about them isn't just a good thought. It tangibly creates the most successful marriages and relationships out there. So when I think about that quote, right, that's where that quote comes from, because it begins with curiosity. Curiosity is the precursor to appreciation. Appreciation is the birthplace of empathy. With empathy, we develop compassion. And when you have compassion, you have the ability to literally connect with anyone. So that's where that quote comes from, a not short response to your short question.
Oh, no, that is seriously. We see as that background behind you full of thank you notes.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to tell. See if I back up a little bit, you can see. So these are all handwritten cards. So when I speak at companies or at conferences all over the country, or someone gets a copy of my book, I'll get a thank you card in the mail. I read it and then I put it on the wall afterwards.
Okay, we want to know one thing. Who was the hardest person for you?
Yeah,
Years.
that's an interesting question. So who is the hardest person to write a card to? I'll just ask this question. I can't see everyone's hand, so you'll have to relay what's there. But how many of you know that the easiest people to take for granted in your life are those that are closest to you? How many of you guys know that to be true? The easiest people to take for granted in your life are those that are closest to you.
For sure.
Spouse,
That was
children,
complaint of me as a teenager.
admin, all of those things, right? So check this out. For me, that's the same thing. And that person is absolutely my wife, Monica. So my wife, Monica, so we've been married for 12 years. And so we have 4 children now. During the project, we only had 2. So I didn't want to write her just a thank you card. I wanted her to get like the world's greatest love letter. So I time blocked an hour in my day to write this woman my undying love letter, right? And so I sit down and I'm like writing multiple drafts because I want it to be perfect. And I spent an hour on this thing, and it's like a full sheet of paper, front and back, single spaced, you know? And I hold this thing up when I'm done and I'm like, this is a work of art, right? Like this is the next Nicholas Sparks book right here. That was a Notebook reference for the 5 of you who got that joke. I appreciate you laughing at that. But anyways, I was really proud of this letter. I wanted her to get it, and I wanted her to feel how much I loved her, right? So I leave the letter where I know she's going to find it next to her coffee in the morning. So at this point, just to clarify, we had just moved across the country to Texas from California, okay? And we had nothing. We only had brought 1 car plus a U-Haul. We had no couches yet, like pillow cushions on the floor. She'd just given birth to her 2nd child. So like slim pickings on life at this moment, right? And so I leave her letter next to her coffee where I know she's going to see it in the morning. So then I go off to see my clients for the day. And I'm feeling like the greatest husband in the world, right? Because I just made her day with this letter. And I'm waiting. I'm checking my phone every 5 minutes. And I'm like, did she get it yet? No. How about now? And the whole day goes by and she doesn't say anything. And I thought, it's kind of strange, but maybe she wants to wait till I come home to say something. So we continue the day. I come home, have dinner as a family. She doesn't say anything. We put the kids to bed. She still doesn't say anything. We go to bed. Now she falls asleep. I can't fall asleep because I am fuming on my side of the bed. And I'm thinking, are you serious? I literally pour my heart out to you and nothing. I get nothing back. And what's so interesting about this concept is a problem started to occur, which is not uncommon in marriages and significant relationships, which is the seed of resentment started to show up. And I was pretty upset. The next day comes around and I'm getting ready to start the day. And I go to make the coffee and I realize, oh shoot, we ran out of coffee. I was supposed to get some yesterday when I was out with clients, but I was so excited about my letter, I forgot to do that. So we have no coffee. I thought, okay, no big deal. I'm just going to get some coffee for myself on the way out of town to go see my clients for the day. So I'm starting to tiptoe out of the house so as to not wake my family, but it happens anyways. My wife starts walking down the stairs and she's in the middle of the stairs. And guys, she was dead tired, right? Infant in one arm, toddler clung to her leg, and she's in the middle of the stairs and she just looks at me and says, "Oh, sweetheart, before you go, is the coffee ready?" Oh, shoot, sweetheart, we ran out of coffee. And you could slowly see that information sinking into her tired mom brain. And I don't know if you've ever looked deep into somebody's eyes while they were planning to murder you. But that was the experience in that moment. But I needed to leave because I had a client to go see. So I'm like, "So sorry, honey, I got to go. Bye." And then I drive down the street. I go to Starbucks. I'm ordering my drink. Now you got to understand, I wanted to do the right thing. What's the right thing in this moment? Buy some extra coffee, drive backwards home and drop it off for her. But you got to understand, I live in Dallas, Texas, huge metropolitan area. My appointment was on the other side of the city, and I was about to hit the biggest traffic of the day unless I got on the freeway immediately. And otherwise, I was going to be late to see my client. And by the way, how often are we given this choice? Business or relationship, choose. And clearly in that moment, I made my choice. And I hate to tell you guys that I actually thought this, but I actually thought she deserves that. She deserves to feel a little bit of that pain that I felt yesterday. When we don't get the recognition or appreciation we feel we've earned, resentment starts to creep in. It is the lack of acknowledgement is the number 2 reason people leave their jobs. One of the top 5 reasons people get a divorce. And then I had a second thought. And the second thought was, how can you do that? How can you literally write this woman an undying love letter yesterday, and then today you leave her hanging? So I pull to the drive-thru. I get to the window. The barista hands me my drink. I say, "Make it 2." She makes me a second cup of coffee. I drive backwards home. I leave the cup of coffee on the doorstep with a little note. And here's all the note said. It said, "Monica, thank you for working hard to take care of our boys. You are always worth a hot cup of coffee." I drive down the street. I send her a text message. I say, "Come outside." She comes outside. She sees it. She takes a picture of it. She posts it on Instagram. She says, "Oh my gosh, I have the greatest husband in the world." She's sending me text messages. Kissy face. I love you. You saved my life today. And I am now in bumper to bumper traffic. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Didn't yesterday I write you the world's greatest love letter and you didn't say anything? And today I leave you 2 sentences and a cup of coffee, and that's what did it for you? And you know what I said? I said, "I'll take it. I'll take the win for the team." Because when you're a husband, you take every win that you can get. And I call my client in advance so she knows I'm going to be late. It worked out. We still had a great day, made a sale. I come home. We have dinner as a family. We put the kids to bed. And there's this moment at the end of the day where we're just sitting on pillow cushions on the floor and we're sharing a glass of wine. And my wife looks at me and she says, "Sweetheart, I'd have to tell you something. I did get your letter yesterday, and it was very sweet. And I know that you love me. But what I really needed was for you to show up for me. What I needed was for you to show up for me." That changed everything. What I learned from that experience is that so many people in my life didn't need another thank you card. What they actually needed was for me to show up for that relationship. Because when you think about what causes us to be loyal, is it's knowing somebody has our back, knowing somebody's going to be there when we need it most. Think about what you're asking a client to do when they're loyal to you or to send you a referral. You're asking them to think about you and to have your back when you're not around. So what are we doing to actively create that with those around us? It's about how we show up for them. That experience changed everything. And it gave me a question. We should probably wrap with this because I know you guys got to probably wrap the meeting. And if there's any more questions, I'm happy to answer those. But it gave me a question to ask, which is, how do you treat that for which you are grateful? This was the thing that was the most revolutionary in the whole year-long project of writing 1,825 thank you cards, which was not in just writing all the cards. There was so much that came out of that. But the real power came in me showing up consistent with someone who believed all those things that they wrote. Because think of it, if all I do is tell my wife how much I appreciate her, but I don't actually do anything to prove and show her that, my words lose value. My words don't mean anything. And if we want to create loyalty, it's about how well we make and keep promises with people. And so that was the story of the hardest letter that I had to write, but arguably one of the most valuable that came out of it. So I'll swing that back to you.
Telling us your most epic story of gratitude.
The most, sure. Yeah. Well, and I'll try to be, how much time do we have, by the way? Because I want to be conscious of.
Minutes.
What was that?
A couple minutes. I don't know, 5-ish.
Okay. I'm going to give a different story than I normally tell.
Okay.
So I am a graduate of Gonzaga University, and I apologize in advance if you are a BYU fan, because we have some fun relationship with BYU. Anyways, right? Y'all have also beat us in some of the most significant games. However, I'm a graduate of Gonzaga. 2017, we make it to the national championship for NCAA basketball, arguably the biggest thing that happened in my school's history. And we lose to the UNC Tar Heels. And it was a really challenging game. It was awful to watch. And at the end of the night, my wife puts our kids to bed and it's 9 p.m. I feel terrible. I'm upset. And I still haven't written any thank you cards. So how do you do that, right? How do you access gratitude when you don't feel like it? Right? Like, it's easy right now here in this moment to talk about what we're grateful for when things are going well. But what about when they're not? How do we access it? And what's really interesting is doing research on language. I love the word gratitude based on Dr. Robert Emmons. He's the foremost researcher on gratitude as a competitive advantage in life. And the definition he gives is gratitude is the emotion one feels when we receive a gift or experience something as a gift. When gratitude is the emotion you feel when you receive a gift or experience something as a gift. So what does that mean? Think of it this way, right? It's not just getting a gift and the excitement you feel, it's the experience of it, right? And I bet many of you can think of a time back years ago when you were in your first relationship and then it ended, right? Like, you probably weren't excited about life. Maybe you were like, men are terrible, women are awful, you can't trust them, right? Whatever you felt at that time was very real for you. You were in pain. However, years later, with time and perspective, you can look back on that moment and you can say, well, I'm so grateful that that happened. Because that happened, I met this person over here who I was meant to meet. Or because of that what happened over there, I learned all these things about myself or about relationships, and I've grown because of that. So you can literally look back at pain and feel gratitude. So the question becomes, how long does it take you to feel gratitude from a painful experience? And the answer is, as long as it takes you to find the gift. And so 9 o'clock at night, I'm sitting here upset. My team just lost. And I'm trying to think, what's the gift? Where's the gift? Where's the good? And a light bulb goes off. And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't just watch my team lose the national championship. I watched arguably the best team in my school's history play basketball this year. That deserves celebration. I'm going to write a thank you card to every single member of the Gonzaga men's basketball team and the entire coaching staff. And over those next 7 days, I spent hours researching the team, the players, their specific games where they had a great game, and all of their contributions so I could make every letter very personal to each individual. What was crazy about that is it wasn't a day or a week or months for me to feel this. It literally took seconds to go from I'm completely upset and angry to I am so joyful and happy and truly mean it. And I wrote like about 35 thank you letters for the whole team and the staff. And I just moved on. I like forget I do this, right? And 2 months later, no joke, May 21st on my birthday, I'm out to dinner with my wife and she comes up to me with a letter in her hand and she says, "Oh, this came for you in the mail today." And it's addressed from Gonzaga men's basketball. And I open it up. I actually have that letter right here in 1 second. This is a letter, a handwritten card from Mark Few, the head coach of Gonzaga men's basketball, thanking me for the letters that I wrote the team, thanking me for being an alumni, and thanking me for showing up and bringing hope during a very challenging time for the team. I couldn't have paid this guy to write this letter. But what triggered it? Pure, authentic gratitude. And so I know conceptually we think about this as like, wow, that sounds like a good idea. I should do that. But I want to challenge you to realize that there is an actual competitive advantage in your life and your business by making gratitude a habit. And so, that to me is probably the most like epic, or one of the most epic experiences. But there's so much that comes out of that, right? Because yes, you never know how people are going to respond to the letters you write. The other thing is, I bet there are some things that have happened to some people in this room or on this Zoom call that maybe you're not proud of, you're not happy about. There's shame, guilt, pain, things you wish never happened. And it would be trite of me to just say, oh, we'll find the gift in the experience, right? Because I don't want to disavow that that was a painful experience. But I would invite you to consider that there is some seed of value in that painful experience that has a potential positive benefit for you or others. And so my encouragement for you as we're kind of wrapping up today is to find the gift, to look for the gift and the good. And it might even simply be a lesson that you learned that has transformed your life or maybe positively impacted or affected your family. So we should probably wrap there. People got to go sell some houses at some point, right? I think that's what you guys get paid for. Sell real estate. I'm going to throw up my contact info on the two things real quick. Can I give these guys a challenge, by the way?
Yes, please do. That was my next
right.
question. What action could we take and how could people contact you?
Yeah, real simple. 30-day challenge. Go to mrthankyou.com, mrthankyou.com/30 and download a free 30-day challenge packet. And I would challenge anyone to do this once a day for 30 days. You don't have to do what I did. You don't have to write 5 a day for a year, 1 a day for 30 days. And I guarantee you're going to see a huge shift in your well-being, your relationships, and your overall experience of your business. So go to mrthankyou.com/30. And then lastly, if you want to stay in touch with me, Instagram is probably one of the best places to find me, but obviously our website's mrthankyou.com, mrthankyou.com. You're also welcome to check out my book on Amazon. So Mr. Thank You Project. And that's it. I'd love to stay in touch with you and hear from what you guys got from this. But my real challenge from you guys today is really simple. Just if you don't do anything I talked about, right? Just write 1 letter today. Just do 1. And send it. Because the last thing I can say is, when I was wrapping up my year, I got a call from my best friend, Nick. And Nick was the best man at my wedding. His parents were like my parents. And unfortunately, Nick called to tell me that his father had just passed away. And what was terrible about that wasn't just, yes, obviously that experience was awful, but what made it worse was I had written Nick's dad a letter and I hadn't sent it yet. It was literally sitting on my desk while he was telling me the news. And so while I'm not happy that that happened, I am grateful for the lesson, which is the urgency of letting people know how much they matter to you. because one of the greatest fallacies in relationships is the assumption that they'll be there tomorrow. And you never know when you're last going to get to tell someone how much they mean to you. So those are my
Cool.
final thoughts. Yeah, stay in touch with me. Sign up for my blog. We got Gratitude School. It's going to be launching in May. We're going to be teaching these principles on a much deeper level. So feel free to look for that. And that's it, guys.
Nice. Thank you, John. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys.
That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So many good nuggets in there. I am JK. And thank you, First Colony, for lunch. So make sure and thank them. Thanks, everybody.